Hello, hello, hello. Eric Ford here, presenting again in our series, Leading from Your Strengths. A little throwback there for some of the people in my generation. The Who, Won't Get Fooled Again. Old boss, same as the new boss. And that's the topic for today's lecture. When you're the boss, how do you want to lead? How do you want to manage? What are the things you can do to make yourself a better manager? And I think the first thing to think about is maybe doing away with terms like leadership and management is a good starting point. We're really working with others. That's the fact of the modern world. Throughout most of human history, there's been a fairly strict social hierarchy, whether it's serfdom, enslavement is fairly common. There are actually more people enslaved today across the world than at any point in history as an absolute number, not as a percentage. As a percentage, you probably have to go back to the ancient Roman era when almost everybody was essentially enslaved to the Roman Senate and empire, if you will. But we're working in a different world. And let's talk about how we can do that. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the normative management required feature of talking about what it is to manage. And then I'm going to give you 16 thoughts that I've been mulling over for years and years and years. And the slide deck moves up. It's been as many as 25 slides. It's been as few as 7, plus or minus 2. And I'll try to share some of that with you today. People in the process. People are in organizations, and I apologize, I've got my English spelling working at the moment, are an organization's most important assets. The task of managers are essentially people-oriented. This is your day-to-day bread and butter. It's what you do. If you're doing it right, I say there's sort of an 80-20 rule. You're probably spending 80% of your time with people. And if you're a restaurant or in the service industry, that often means on the floor with in front of your customers. And if you're not doing that, you're just not going to be successful. Poor people management is an important contribution to project failure. Essentially not letting people know that they're succeeding in real time is the fastest way to lose everyone's attention, etc. Yes. No worries. I too teach from restaurants occasionally. So what are the 4 big factors that I try to emphasize in day-to-day life? One is consistency. Good managers are just inflappable. They sort of never change by much. They're never angry. They're never too excited. They tend to be sort of cool and detached. And that's a good thing. You want people that you can tell things to, and you want to be the person your employees come to talk to, and they know that you're not going to overreact, that you're going to take things in stride. And they want to know that you don't have favorites and those sorts of things. Respect. And I struggled with this, whether to put that first or second. The point is, everybody on your team needs to be bringing something to the table, and they may have shared skills, and it's very possible you need multiple people with similar skills in order to make your team work. But recognize that those skills are something that differentiates them from the rest of the world and the reason they're on your team. And you really need to acknowledge that on sort of a day in and day out basis. Also, inclusion. People will work harder for ideas where they think they've had meaningful input into the design of the project, into the decisions made, and how the project is pursued. And honesty. You just have to tell people up front, and dragging out bad news interminably is just bad practice. I'll go back to that for 1 second. One of my mantras for the people who work for me is I don't mind bad news. I dislike surprises, and I particularly dislike surprises where the bad news comes to me by way of a customer or my boss. Those sorts of surprises are unwelcome. My employees ought to be getting to me first so that I'm in a position to handle the feedback, negative feedback I'm about to receive from others. And this is where we talked about managing up in earlier lectures. People who are managing up, they need to know that they need to manage me upward. And that's one of the things I expect to be managed effectively by. The next biggest thing is selecting staff. You have to get the people who want to be there. And the fact of the matter is the people who don't want to be there will spend a lot of their time, rather than working on the project, they'll spend their time explaining to others why the project is unimportant and they shouldn't be allocating their effort to it either. It's very important that those people not be allowed to stay. They're unhappy for a reason. If they're making you unhappy, do not endure it. It's much better to make sure you get the right staff in place. And if you take over a new position, in some cases, this means getting rid of some of the people who've been there longer. One of the things it's very difficult to hear is we've always done it this way. And you'll see at organizations that there's often a lot of churn. At the University of Alabama, Birmingham, where I work, they turned over all of the deans in a few years because they had a new boss and they wanted people that were doing the things they wanted. And that's fair enough. But they have to know that it's coming. So those sorts of selecting staff is absolutely critical. The other part about this process when you do it is you need to give people a realistic job preview. They really need to spend a day on the job and work with others closely in a way that you're not just giving them all of the wine and roses tour as they come along. Motivating people. So there's two ways to think about this. I can either be constantly cheerleading and uplifting and motivating others, or I can bring some people who have intrinsic motivation. In other words, they themselves are motivated. And again, back to the hiring process, you want some people who are self-driven. It's just too much work to always be lifting everybody else up, particularly if you're doing complicated tasks that are not routine. It's one thing if it's routine to be a cheerleader and make sure that everybody's getting their daily input. It's a different thing if you're always having to manage the micro aspects of their job. So how do we think about motivation? And one of the fairly famous models is something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I don't generally present this. I'm going to present something similar to it here in just a moment. But Maslow's hierarchy of needs has been largely discredited from an empirical standpoint. While it's intellectually satisfying and simplistic and makes good common sense, it just doesn't actually work. People aren't motivated in those sorts of ways. So I will talk about people's basic needs, personal needs, and social needs. So here's what I call the human needs hierarchy. One is physiological needs. Are you giving people a workspace that is welcoming, friendly, that they want to come to? And we see throughout Silicon Valley and the tech industry, they've gone to extraordinary lengths to make it so people want to come to work, want to spend hours at the workplace, don't leave the workplace for virtually any reason. You know, they have gyms and showers and restaurants and free food and those sorts of things. One of the industries I used to work a lot in was health information technology. There's a company called Epic, and they're located in Verona, Wisconsin. And they have a very interesting system on these physiological needs. At 5 o'clock, all of the food is free for people who've been there 5 or more years. At 6 o'clock, it's free for all the people who've been there 4 or more years. At 7 o'clock, it's free for everybody. So there's sort of this incentive system where if you've been with us for a long time, you get the perks of free dinners if you're working late into the night. And Epic, these people are go-getters. They often work many, many, many long hours, especially when they're doing a build of a component or about to roll out a new module. Safety needs. This is not to be, and I put this in here, and it's fairly significant. Just the other day at my place of work, we had an incident where somebody tried to burn the building down. And that resonates with people. That's a fear, not feeling safe in one's workplace. My wife, actually, when she works late at night, has to walk from an office building to a parking deck. And I often encourage her, please call the health system police department and have them escort you. They do it for a reason, and it's a service, and don't take it lightly. Get to know those people, and actually having you do that will make those pathways that you traverse routinely safer, because criminals know where the police are, frankly. And so creating those sort of safety environments and encouraging a safe environment. The next thing is social needs. And this varies greatly. We hear a lot about equity in our workplace. In particular, one of the big topics is often pay equity. And the Europeans at this moment are about to put into law something called wage transparency, so everybody can see what everybody else gets paid. And many universities, you can go look up salaries at most public institutions. When you can have that transparency, the pay disparities often disappear over the course of 5 to 10 years. It still takes some time to work through systems. But if you think about that as a social need, that occurs. Other people need community at the workplace. They need outlets beyond the mere work that they're doing. They want to feel that the place they work does important things. Again, many institutions will do things like have weekends working at Habitat for Humanity or other organizations in the community, and they like to see that their place of work is in fact supporting those sorts of things. And it's something you should attend to. I know this is by and large gone by the boards throughout COVID, that we've put aside many of those social events. I think people are craving this a great deal at this point, and it would be the wise manager that creates opportunities for social connection beyond the internet interface that I'm using here today to talk to my students and partners in this project. And lastly is esteem needs. People need recognition, and they need to be told that they are doing things well. One of the things I often say is catch people doing things right. I actually carry around in my pocket wooden nickels from a place called Big Spoon Creamery, and every wooden nickel is worth a single scoop of ice cream. But when I catch somebody doing something right and say, oh, you know, this is wonderful, I really didn't expect this. Here's something for you. Have a wooden nickel, and if I know they've got a couple of kids, I'll give them 2, and I'll take your kids and have a scoop of ice cream. And it's one of those things, it's an experience. It's not monetarily a big deal, but it shows that I'm thinking about them in a different way and even prepared to be happy for them, and it matters. So providing people the esteem needs that they value. And this varies from person to person greatly, by the way. You know, some people like to get the Employee of the Month plaque. Others are less sanguine about it. Some of them just want the money. Let's face it, other people would value a day off. Figure out what it is that touches on each and every person that works for you in terms of their esteem needs, and make sure that you're in a place that you're prepared to activate something along those lines when they do the things you need them to be doing to succeed. Again, I'll just review it briefly. On the social thing, you need to provide communal activities. And this goes beyond the workplace and other things that we normally do to just drive the work forward. Think about those. Allow informal communications. You really want people talking to you. You need to know what's happening. The other day, I took a couple staff members to lunch, 3 of them. And it's interesting when you get in a car, and if you've ever had teenage children, for example, I would take my teenagers to soccer games, and there'd be 4 or 5 girls piled into the back of the SUV, and they would be saying things as if I weren't there. And you would learn more about what was going on in your child's life from what was coming across the back of the seat as they just idly chattered, not thinking about who was driving the car, than they would otherwise. Similarly, we went out to work, people are talking among themselves. You're learning a lot about what's going on, what makes them happy, what they're worried about in the workplace, and ways that you wouldn't normally find out. Again, I've talked about esteem, finding the right rewards for the right person. I'm a big advocate of experiences rather than items. If you're married or have a significant other, if you give a gift of a watch, I've often heard, this is superstition, when the watch breaks, the relationship breaks. You know, when the clock comes to a stop, so does the relationship. Therefore, you never give watches as gifts, that sort of thing. If you give somebody a car, you know, it's a big gift, and the day it gets a ding in the car, there's a negative affect around it. So experiences are better than items. Self-realization, something that shows people are moving up the pathway, creating pathways to success. And we see this in a lot of places, and even at universities right now, especially research-intensive universities. They're often restructuring, especially the non-medical staff, the people who do research, so that they have distinct tracks that lead them to points where they can be in leadership positions themselves. And if your organization doesn't have that for each and every employee, then there's something going wrong in your organization. So, big part of this is typing. And again, I hope in future iterations of this class, and I'll make assignments around this, I'll probably have what's it like to manage an Enneagram type 7, or what's it like to manage an Enneagram type 3, and allow students to go out and, as part of a project, actually talk to some of their employees and ask them how they want to be managed, knowing what type they are. With that said, in general, in management, we have 3 big types. These are task-oriented people, people who really just want to get the thing done. Out in West Texas, where I grew up, we have an expression, get her done. And we are a task-oriented people by our very nature, because it's a hard task environment, and failing to do tasks sort of leads you down the path of self-destruction. There are many people who are self-oriented, who are looking to get promoted within themselves, who want to move up in the workplace, who want the next rung on the ladder. And a lot of these people are excellent workers for a variety of reasons, but they tend to come and go, and a certain amount of that is okay. New people will bring new ideas. And if the worst thing that happens is you keep getting people promoted into jobs at other institutions or other places, that ought to make you feel good. It's not the worst thing to have somebody leave who's getting promoted and succeeding elsewhere. That's the sign of an excellent manager, and you should hope for that on occasion. And then there are those people that are interaction oriented. And again, this is where COVID and the remote workers, these people are truly suffering at the moment, by the way. They crave something different. And a lot of times they know the answer, but they'll come to you and talk about it. And they just want the interaction, and they want to know what's going on. They want to feel in the loop. So a little more in depth, task-oriented, to summarize, the motivation is the work itself. Self-oriented, they like goals, they want to get rich, they want to have days off, they want recognition. And interaction-oriented, these are people who want to be around others. And this is where your job is to look out across the people that work for you and balance these different motivations and make sure that you're getting the work group together that has the right mix of motivations and those sorts of things that will keep your organization humming along. All right. Leadership, leadership, leadership. Oh my goodness. I am so tired of this word among any others. The other word, bandwidth, do not say bandwidth to me. Do not tell me you're giving me 10 minutes back at the end of a meeting that was poorly planned, poorly organized, and didn't need to happen at all. Buzzwords, I am so tired of. Leadership, I hate to say it, has fallen into that milieu. And I say leadership is what happens when management fails. You can get a long, long, long way in the world just doing the day-to-day things right that good managers do. And I'm not saying that, and I'll talk about what are the differences between the classic dichotomy of leaders and managers. Leaders do the right things, managers do things right. Well, okay, I think managers do the right things too, and the difference is managers do the right things by way of their people. That's keeping your staff happy. If you'll do that, you'll be a great leader, and you do it by being a good manager. Managers like stability. How can we do things better? I would say that managers do take a more incremental approach to change. They're more cautious, and with good cause. They ought to be more cautious. They've got people that they are responsible for. In many ways, leaders are in some sense freed from having the responsibility of day-to-day worrying about individuals, if you want to dichotomize it that way. Leaders challenge the status quo. Managers seek to preserve it. I think managers, this again is a little bit off, managers seek to manage change in a way that's respectful of the people that are currently there so that they have an opportunity to succeed in any future organization. All right. And again, this idea of short-term versus long-term. I would tell you managers are interested in the long-term well-being of the people that work for them. And that's important. And I'm not saying that leaders don't, but oftentimes leaders are always on to the next thing. Managers do tend to be reactive. Our employees come to us with things that we need to do, and that's fine. All right, so I won't belabor this list too much, but I do think there's no shame in being a good manager. And as a matter of fact, being a great leader with no management skills is one of the worst things that can happen. And let's see if I've got well, I'll get to it in a minute. So what skills are needed to manage people well? Well, there's the conscious part, things like tasks, resources, time, budgets. I talked about what I call the Pareto rule, is the 80-20 rule. You should spend 20% of your time on this: mapping out tasks, managing resources, doing budgets. You should spend the other 80% of your time on this subconscious management thing. You need to be out among your people, making sure that their feelings, values, motivations are all being tended to in an effective fashion. This is something I personally struggle with. Listening skills are absolutely critical. If I can give you one tip, there's something called Jungian Therapy, and there's several kinds of therapy, and I'm talking about psychology and psychiatry. There's the classic version where Freudian, where you go lay on the couch and talk, and somebody sits behind you and says nothing, and you just talk, and then you walk away, and I don't know what you're getting out of that, frankly. There's more proactive behavior modification sorts of therapies where somebody comes and tells the psychologist or psychiatrist or counselor their issues, and the therapist then gives them actionable means for correcting this. We do this through motivational interviewing and those sorts of techniques. And there is a role for that in management, where you're actually trying to modify individuals who work for you and their behaviors, and you want to give them feedback and tools. For example, here's how you manage up and how you manage me up, as an example. And the last one is what I call this Jungian thing. And what they do is they simply repeat back what was said to them. And this is very powerful in that oftentimes when I hear what I just said, I'm shocked, disturbed, disappointed, many things, and I wish I could re-say it. And I think as a manager, if you do that for people in a way that's constructive and kind, it can be very powerful in releasing the freedom within the individual to initiate the changes that actually get the work done more effectively. The other thing that my casual observation, especially of young managers, that they struggle with is the idea of delegation. People tend to go to the extremes. They either delegate everything suddenly because, oh, now I can get rid of everything. I've got people working for me. Or they tend to keep hold of everything, and that doesn't work either. That becomes micromanagement in effect. And they're both problematic, and you don't really want to do either. The things you need to do is start a delegation hierarchy. You essentially want people to take on more and more responsibility and authority for carrying out tasks over time, but you need to build that up within those individuals. And one way to think about this, and you need to do it yourself, is this quadrant of urgency, as I call it. How urgent is the issue and how important is it? And these are the things that really matter. And you need to go ahead and do those now. Because we have a lot of things that are framed as urgent, but they're not important. And you really ought to relegate, delegate, and get rid of those items to the best of your ability. And that's one of the ways to think about, should I be doing this? This is important. It's not time sensitive, therefore I can let somebody else do it and check. It's not important, but needs to be done. Therefore, I can delegate it to somebody else and check it. And if it goes wrong, it's a teachable moment, those sorts of things. So ask yourself, when you have something in front of you, is this urgent and important? And does it need to be me? And if it's not urgent and it's not important, that's easy. Delegate. So I will go back to this idea of leadership, and there's no getting away from it. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean the world's going to stop talking about it. Leadership basics, it's a choice. Just because you're the boss doesn't mean you're necessarily the leader. Again, as I mentioned earlier, especially when you're the new boss, chances are there's an informal leadership structure already in your organization, and you'll need to contend with that on some level, especially if it's a leadership that's working against you. At one point, I had a job where I ran a large academic set of programs, and the people who had been there for several years were very committed to keeping the class size at 25 people. And there were very good reasons for that, and they were not unreal. With that said, the students were paying about $50,000 a year in tuition, and the department chair wanted 5 more students. They wanted a class of 30. And it was not an unreasonable ask, because 5 times 50, $250,000 a year. That's the whole faculty salary line. That's a lot of perks into our system. And there was no reason for us not to do it. We could do it. It put a little more strain on some of our placement and other people, but it was not an unreasonable request of the department chair, and there were good reasons behind it, and we could do it. With that said, the informal leadership was so set against it that I eventually had to terminate the person who did our recruiting, because quite frankly, she simply refused to admit more than 25 people. And I just couldn't. She was going to disobey a direct order from my boss on my behalf and put me in trouble. And it was unfortunate because she was extraordinarily competent, and I liked her. The worst part still was I liked her. It's one of those, you're so smart and you do such a great job and you recruit so many good students, but it was just more than she could bear, and she had to go. So those are things that leadership has to do. So it was a choice, and she chose to lead. And I had to pull rank. And that was the ugly part of that. It's also a set of behaviors. It's easy to tell If you've ever been in the military, especially your sort of first day in a new unit, if an officer gives you an order and all the enlisted people look over at the chief, something's the matter, or the sergeant. They don't trust the officer's judgment at that point. And you can tell that the senior enlisted people are sort of running the show. And that's not always a bad thing, to be candid. They tend to be there for the long haul in some regards, but it's not good either. You know, these people, that's a failure on the middle management in this case to elevate the officers to the status that they've been granted by our government, among other things, but that they probably deserve. And in some sense, the leading enlisted people were undercutting their own authority unwittingly because they didn't recognize the chain of command fully. So again, all of these things can happen. They can be improved, but leadership and good management, they're mostly about relationships. So I talked a little earlier about what leadership is not. There's something going around right now called authentic leadership. I'm an authentic leader, which just means I'm going to do whatever I want without any rationale, without any input from others, my way or the highway. I'm going from the gut. And somehow, though, this word authentic carries some cachet with it that it's troublesome. So in the same way, don't talk to me about bandwidth. Don't talk to me about authentic leadership. Emotionally intelligent. Oh, we're doing it because it's the emotionally intelligent thing to do. And I often hear this when we have not actually conducted any analysis. So we've opted not to do anything actually intelligent, and we're just going to, like, once again, going to do whatever we feel is right. And that's just not very good. There's one other principle you'll often hear about leadership, and this is something called the Peter Principle. And the Peter Principle, in a quick phrase, is everybody rises to their own level of incompetence and sort of stagnates in that role. And we see this a lot of places. Again, I'm in the healthcare field. Lots of times in the nursing units, we'll go, and the nurse that has the best bedside manner, has the best outcomes with their clinical work, we promote that nurse to the manager. And unfortunately, management skills are not the same thing that make you successful as a clinical provider in a hospital unit. And therefore, those people often suffer because we haven't provided them with the education, training, and management opportunities to build those skills. There's something that's even worse, however, and this is not in the popular literature, so you're getting something from me. If you have the Peter Principle, you might also have something called the Paul Principle. The Paul Principle says people can actually be promoted above their level of incompetence. And this is something that managers do by choice. They don't want to have the most competent people working for them because they feel it reflects badly on them. I don't believe this at all. You hire the smartest, hardest, most successful people you can, and if you wind up working for them, at least you can always say, I gave you your start. And that's not a bad thing to have happen. You want people better than you working for you if you can, in any way, shape, or form, make it happen. And also, you want to give them credit for the stuff they do. You want people being promoted. As I said earlier, there are worse things than having people leave your organization to work at better institutions. So now we're going to deviate out into our French existential part of the evening. I knew you were all looking forward to this. There's a famous French playwright, Jean-Paul Sartre, and he has an expression, hell is other people. And this you hear often among managers, is that, at the university, the president jokes, this would be a great job if it weren't for the deans. The deans have a joke where this would be a great job if it weren't for the faculty, and the faculty have a joke that this would be a great job if it weren't for the students. And of course, the students, I know you two have the joke that this would be a great place if it weren't for the faculty, but that's a different story. But what he means by hell is other people is it's a play that's set in a single room, and the room is in fact hell, and the actors, there are three of them, are there talking amongst themselves. And the problem is, as you're talking to the other people, you're getting a reflection of yourself. And that's the part that makes it the hell, is this unrelenting reality of who you are that is imposed upon them. There's actually a very good, if you watch the old Rod Serling Twilight Zone, I think it's called The Toy Box, and it's the same play, except there's a toy box and the toys are inside. There's a soldier, there's a ballerina, there's a hobo, and they all have to play these roles, and they don't realize that they're toys in a sense, but they're also having to reflect on what they were by design. And that's what management is. This is what your life is. You know, people are going to reflect back to you how you treat them. There's something called the Golden Rule, fairly famous prophet, to put it mildly, often said, treat others as you wish to be treated. And that is certainly a fine sentiment. I would also say the job of managers is even slightly tougher. It's the platinum rule. Treat others as they want to be treated, not necessarily what you want. And that's harder still. And that means that you have to go out and learn something about them. So hell is other people. If you see me on the street and I'm muttering that, you know what I'm thinking about. So now the part you've really been waiting for. Other people, 16, unproven, somewhat counterintuitive, sometimes irreverent, often overlapping, always difficult to do, overly idealistic, and what I think you ought to be doing day in and day out as you manage other people. Dream big and let people know that you're dreaming big. Share those dreams. Nothing pulls people along like knowing that there's something greater in your own mind. Look for effectiveness before efficiency. We often are focused on efficiency. Most of our courses that you will take in an MBA program or other places will focus on efficiency first and making sure that everything is cost effective in particular. Again, I've talked about micromanagement. Don't do it. Leadership is management. Without leadership is called bureaucracy. Avoid bureaucracy. I'll get to that in a moment. All solutions are temporary. What do I mean this? Perfect is the enemy of done. Get things done. Don't worry about them being perfect. Chances are the solution's not going to work on the next problem, so there's no reason to build a great machine that you're never only going to be able to use once. Keep moving. Keep moving. Don't worry too much about things being perfect. Simple systems are the best. Do not create more complexity than you need. It's pointless. There's no need for it. We have a lot of things in organizations today, and I'll get to this in just a moment, where there are lines of bureaucracy that have no purpose per se. And when they don't have a purpose, what they do is they create their own purpose. And how do they do this? Well, they do it by asking me to provide surveys or to take training or to do other things that aren't really relevant to my job, but justify their existence. And they make the system extraordinarily complex. So one of the things I like to have people do in the classes and my interactions with them is create their key performance indicators. Focus on what matters. Manage what matters. Measure what matters. Keep it simple. By the way, if you create a point system, it will be gamed all the time. So whenever you do that, be prepared to lose, because you're going to lose the game. It's you against many, many, many employees. And when you create a point system, they're going to figure it out. And then make measures that you can actually manage and measure. In other words, if you can't measure it and actually act on it, that's a pointless measure. Your system is not more important than the people working it. I think this is something we've lost sight of in our society to a significant extent, and you know it when you get on a telephone call with your bank or some other organization and you have to go through the phone tree and there's simply no real person at the other end, that's because they don't care about real people. And that's troubling. If you can't reach a real person, you might consider changing your bank or looking at a different place. And we do this quite often. And the other part, you go to someplace online, or you're dealing with somebody and they say, I can't do that for you, then you're talking to the wrong person. I always ask, do you have the authority to give me what I'm asking? And until I get to that person, I stop talking. There's no reason for me to waste their time or my effort on getting to somebody who only has the authority to say no. Again, I want to repeat this one more time, and I've said it twice already, I know. When you grow everyone in the organization, some people will leave. And that's okay. And that's a good thing. Not only that, some people will leave and come back. And that's also a good thing. So it's worth thinking about. This other thing, pay people as much as you can. It's just smart. You don't want people feeling that you are profiting from their effort when they don't get as much as they deserve. There's something I call one-level leadership. I'm a big fan of informal workplaces. Everybody's a peer. The people who are in the front line talking to your customers are going to know more about your business and what's going wrong with it in particular, and what needs to be fixed than you're ever going to know simply looking out from your office window. They really deserve your respect and your courtesies, and you need to listen to them and be sure you're giving them opportunities to stop and talk to you. Casual's better than formal. Fewer ties, dry cleaning bills, etc., that my employees encounter, the happier I am. Also, titles create barriers. When I worked at Texas Tech, we actually had an opening for a brief period where the HR system was recalibrating all the job titles. And so we managed to slip in things like ninjas and samurai and a whole anime sort of themed hierarchy of job titles into the HR system before they even knew what we were doing. And so we had all sorts of people with crazy job titles, and it was a lot of fun and people enjoyed it. And, and you see it's taken on a life of its own, and some of it's a little bit goofy, and I don't like that aspect. It was fun at first, but getting rid of the job titles, it's a good thing. Fewer perks are better than more perks. Giving people perks that matters. Again, openness and generally open door. Ownership. You want your employees to own things. If they have ownership of the process, they'll do wonders. Allow budget carryovers. This is a little bit of I'm getting into the weeds here when I say this, but resetting everybody to zero and not letting them reinvest how they see fit is a big problem. I mentioned catch people doing things right. Do this at least once a day. This is like the Boy Scouts, do a good deed every day. It's the same thing. Catch somebody doing something right each and every day. And oh, by the way, if you do it in the morning, all the better. Personal notes are better than formal memos and letters. Go ahead, spend some money on cards. Nice card stock, stamps. Believe it or not, when people get the mail to this very day, they will look up in the right-hand corner and see if it's a stamped or metered envelope. Be careful with your stamps. A few years ago, I had some stamps that were celebrating, I don't even remember what, but somebody took offense. I think it was the circus. And I'm like, what is it you don't like about the circus? Well, they were afraid of clowns or something. Well, how was I to know that, So you have to be a little careful. And the Star Trek stamps, nobody ever loved those, but I loved them. So at any rate, made me happy. Handwritten notes are better than typed notes. Again, face-to-face, visit people in their space. You want to learn something about somebody, visit them in their space and thank people and do it sincerely. Phantom problems. Just you'd be amazed how much of these eat up our time. Figure out what's real and what's not real and get rid of it. And I also will say, in organizations, phantom problems contribute to the useless rules that all of us have to navigate. As I mentioned, recently we had a fire in my building and somebody set the fire. You know, it was an arsonist. And we've got in my building on every floor no less than 20 cameras. So, I mean, we had pictures of the guy walking up to the building, walking in through the door, getting on the elevator, riding up the elevator, setting fire to something, you know, from 30 different camera angles. And so our answer has been, now we're going to lock the building down even tighter than we've already locked it down. And by the way, I have to use my card 3 times before I'm even within eyesight of my own office. How many gates do you have to go through? I mean, St. Quentin should have so many locks on it, right? And they're going to add more locks. I'm like, how is that going to help anything? I mean, and it wasn't like he didn't catch the guy. I mean, geez. Anyway, so it's a phantom problem. It happened once. It was an aberration. The person was mentally ill. It hadn't happened in 20 years. It's not going to happen for another 20 years and probably ever. Don't get me started. Tinkering. Tinkering makes things worse. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Again, celebrate victories. You have to, when you build your projects and tasks, know that there's going to be moments where you need to celebrate, and you should plan for those. And early victories, recognizing the launch of things that, hey, we started this project, and just getting started on a project is no small feat many places. You know, celebrate that. You know, this is the team coming together for the first time. Again, look for reasons to celebrate. This is something where, again, society has gone horribly, horribly off the rails in this man's opinion. And this is because the accountants, IT, and other support functions think I work for them. And I'm like, when the IT guy comes by and berates me about downloading statistical software, I'm like, you know, you work for me, not the other way around. You're here to make my life better, to make my computer work. And I'm happy you're here and I respect your opinion, but berating me because I got something that wasn't authorized by the IT department. Well, I didn't have 5 years to wait for the IT department to go through its rings of hell process. So I just downloaded it. You know, it was open source. And yeah, you know, it's probably Russian hackers, but you got to break a few eggs, right? Again, this is something, if you're taking a classic management course, the difference between line are the people who are doing the work and the work that matters. Staff are the people who support the work, and the staff should work for the line, not the other way around. It's just that simple. Anything that's make work has to stop. Just add, you know, do you know who Marie Kondo is? She's the woman who does the joy of small things. If you walk around your house tonight as an exercise, go to your house and pick up an object. I'll pick up an object. Let's see, what is this? This is the Roku remote. Does the Roku remote bring me happiness? Oh, hell yeah, it does. I love the Roku remote. We're keeping that. You know, other things that don't, though, get thrown away. So go work on it. How this did not become the management theory of the century is beyond me. It's called management by wandering around, and it's a real thing. Get out each and every day onto the floor, talk to people, make sure that they're there on time, they have what they need, and they're in a good space. And if there's anything you can do to make their life better, fix it. By the time the hard data gets to you, like I'm quitting, it's too late. Again, customers, clients, patients, the more you can talk to them, the better off you are. And you can read the slide yourself. Again, recruiting is key. Get the right people in. Good inputs, give good outputs. All positions are critical. And there's last thing, and I apologize in advance, there's something called the no asshole rule. If people are unkind to one another, those people got to go no matter how competent they are. And it's unfortunate that many people take being very competent in their job as license to be unkind to others. And I find that very disheartening. I apologize. I'm going to look at my chat. Oh, yeah, yeah. All right, good. Uh, People are talking among themselves. I hope you're enjoying it. It's your job to say yes as well as no. So this is my old set of slides. We already have enough no people. There's a whole level of management that only has the authority to say no. As I mentioned, I work in a large academic center. I would tell you there's actually probably 3 levels of people whose whole job is no. And these people live by the motto, no bureaucrat ever got fired for saying no. I mean, they might as well put it on the front of their desk. There's something called trips to Abilene or the Abilene paradox. If you YouTube Abilene paradox, you'll see lots of funny stories. But Abilene paradox is where all of us are too afraid to say we don't like it. And so we all get into a situation where we're unhappy. And the classic example is the family meal where, hey, let's go out. Okay, where do you want to go? Well, and nobody wants to say where they want to go. And so we pick some place that's substandard. We go to a cafeteria and everybody's unhappy at the end of the day because nobody spoke up. And when you finally do speak up, you realize, oh, gee, everybody wanted to go out to Chinese. Why didn't we go get Chinese? And it's a form of groupthink, which is the other component. That said, you also have to say no. There's something I often hear referred to as Midwest nice or Ohio nice or Iowa nice or whatever you want to call it. They seem to talk about it in the Midwest more than other places, but it's what I call the Midwest nice. And this is where they're never going to tell you no. They were not going to say yes because they either don't have the authority or they don't want to do it or whatever reason there is, but they're not saying yes. And it would make life a lot easier if they just say, no, I don't want to do it. The other one, by the way, I've already mentioned the word bandwidth. They'll just say, I don't have the bandwidth. Even that means no, and that's fine. Just say no. And if you'll tell me why you're saying no and it's not really bandwidth, what is it about the project that doesn't appeal to you? I wouldn't have come to you if I didn't want you on the project. That would be better. All right. Embrace change and find happiness in what you do. The fact of the matter is the workplace changes more today than it's ever changed throughout history. Again, throughout most of human experience, people grew up and died within 10 miles of the same spot. They did the same job day in and day out, and very little changed throughout their life and probably the life of their children and their children's children. You could literally go a millennia with people not moving more than a couple hundred yards, living the same life. That's not the way of the world today. We're seeing our jobs be automated, taken over by machines, and these are good things. Automation always frees us up to be more creative, more intellectual, and happier. So embrace the change, keep learning, and be happy. 25 unproven. I didn't change my slides. It's now just 16 unproven for this group things. All right. I could be wrong. I probably am, at least on some of these things, but that's the way it is. Thank you very much. With that said, any questions? That was a long lecture. Something in the chat. You're most sincerely welcome. Very good. And again, people have been very good about reaching out to me. I encourage students to feel free to ping away at me. You've got my phone number. If you'll give me a text message before you call, it'll give me a few minutes to get my act together. I'm happy to talk online if you have a particular issue. If you'd like to meet out for coffee or some other thing, I'm typically at the Red Cat down by Railroad Park a disproportionate amount of the time. I probably get more work done there than I do in my office. Something worth knowing about an employee. And I'm happy to meet out. All right. Well, good night.